2011 will forever be known as a historic year in Wisconsin and America. Facing a slowing economy, government at every level faced difficult decisions on how to balance their budgets. The budget fight in Madison centered around the size of government and the cost to you, the taxpayer, to run that government. Collective bargaining privileges for government employees were at the heart of the debate and the turmoil that followed. In an effort to educate the public about the debate and move beyond the typical overblown rhetoric, the Americans for Prosperity Foundation and the John K. MacIver Institute for Public Policy have teamed up to bring you It's Working. But before we explain why the labor reforms are working for Wisconsin taxpayers, we need to go back and examine the events that led up to their approval and implementation. In short, how did we get here? Going into the 2011-2013 budget cycle, Wisconsin faced a $3.6 billion deficit. The previous budget, built on accounting gimmicks and unrealistic tax collection projections, would have ended up spending $3.6 billion more than what state government would have collected in revenues from you, the taxpayer. And that's despite the fact that the previous budget raised taxes by over $2 billion, enacted a new income tax bracket on Wisconsin's wealthiest, used over $2.3 billion of one-time federal stimulus funding to plug holes created by ongoing expenses, and raised taxes on Wisconsin's businesses by 28%. Even with all of this new revenue, the state of Wisconsin still ended up in the red. So the decision for the 2011-2013 budget was clear. State government needed to either find $3.6 billion worth of taxes to raise or cut spending by $3.6 billion to balance the budget. If we are going to have an honest discussion about the state budget and our current fiscal crisis, we need to look at where the state government spends your tax dollars. More than 50% of the state's budget goes to local assistance, state tax dollars sent back to local units of government, your local school, town board, or city council. Another 22% goes to programs like Medicaid, senior care, and Badger Care. With federally imposed restrictions on how these programs are run, it's difficult for state government to find savings in this area. The rest of the budget, almost $8 billion, goes towards state operations. For some perspective, an approximate 10% across-the-board cut in this category would result in $779 million in savings to the taxpayer. Remember, the state of Wisconsin was facing a $3.6 billion deficit, so even a 10% across-the-board cut of every program would not solve the problem. Let's take a closer look at the piece of the pie where savings or cuts could most feasibly be made. Local assistance. Of the $14.7 billion spent on local assistance, 66% goes to K-12 school aids, and another 13% goes to shared revenue for local government operations, a lump sum of tax dollars sent directly back to each municipality in the state that they can spend as they see fit. So if more tax increases were off the table, thankfully for political reasons, the debate quickly boiled down to the cost to run government and the ways to more efficiently run government without disrupting the programs that government provides the public. That means to find the cuts necessary to balance the state budget and put Wisconsin back on a path to fiscal responsibility, the decision came down to whether you save taxpayer money that is spent on actual programs or the bureaucrats whose job it is to run those programs. The biggest budget cost for schools and local governments is the cost of labor, how much taxpayers pay a government worker. In fact, more than 40% of their budgets, on average, are spent on employees. It is clear, to balance the budget, it would be necessary to give local governments the ability and flexibility to save money on government employee compensation to help offset any cuts coming from Madison. And remember, the alternative to reducing spending in Madison would have been higher taxes on families and job providers, smack dab in the middle of the severe recession. For many years, local elected officials have been limited in their ability to make changes, not just to salary and benefits, but also in the way government works. Why is this? Much has to do with the strength of public sector employee unions given to them by state law. The ability to collectively bargain was first granted to state government employees in 1959. Interestingly enough, most federal employees still do not have the ability to collectively bargain, even today. But soon after getting the privilege to collectively bargain, some local public unions resorted to strikes as a means to get higher salaries and benefits. When the Hortonville School Board fired all striking employees in 1974, unions turned to a process called pattern bargaining. They would work to elect union-friendly school board members, negotiate with them for higher wages or benefits, then use those higher levels to negotiate with other school boards in the area for equal compensation. It was tactics like this that have made government benefit packages more lavish than what you will find in the private sector. And it is these benefits that have caused government costs to skyrocket. To reform our government's finances and put Wisconsin on a path to fiscal sustainability, it was necessary to rein in how much taxpayers spend on wages and benefits for our government workers. So what exactly did these reforms do? In February of 2011, a plan was proposed that would ask all government employees to contribute more towards their health insurance, roughly 12%, and finally contribute some of their own money towards their pension benefits, just under 6%. Despite all the hysteria, asking state employees to contribute 12% towards their health insurance and 6% towards their pension would still be 1/3 to 1/4 less than what everyone else pays. In fact, an employee at one of the 500 largest private sector employers in southeastern Wisconsin pays, on average, 25% towards their own health insurance. Having state employees make these modest contributions saved taxpayers $300 million in this 2-year budget alone. The plan also restricted collective bargaining privileges for most public employees to wages only. This gave local governments and school boards the ability to make modifications to their benefits packages without having to get the full approval of the union or give something just as costly right back to the union, negating any potential savings to the taxpayer. This has already resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars in savings. These reforms have been at the heart of the debate throughout 2011. Opponents of this plan, of course, said the sky will fall, and labor unions claimed our way of life here in Wisconsin would be forever changed. So now the question is it working? The answer is a resounding yes. But you don't have to take our word for it. Here are just a few of the success stories happening right now throughout Wisconsin. Kaukauna School District was able to turn a $400,000 deficit into a $1.5 million surplus, reduce class sizes, and even implement educational reforms like merit-based pay for teachers. Appleton School District reduced their health insurance costs by $3.1 million simply by putting their insurance policy out for competitive bidding, which has helped lead to a slight reduction in property taxes. For the first time in 10 years, Wood County will enter the budget process with a surplus. Officials there credit the budget changes implemented in Madison in 2011. Taxpayers in Hudson will save more than $1 million this year alone because of a shift in health insurance providers. In the city of Milwaukee, taxpayers will save an estimated $25 million on increased employee pension and health care contributions alone. As of October 2011, savings for local taxpayers are projected to be more than $300 million. That's on top of the $300 million saved on the state level because of this budget. When facing a budget deficit of more than $3.6 billion in state government and untold hundreds of millions more on a local level, Wisconsin was able to reform the way government works. Wisconsin reformed their public employee bargaining laws. They saved thousands of public employee jobs by requiring modest health insurance and pension contributions. They empowered schools and local governments to require similar reforms. And state and local budgets were balanced without massive layoffs or tax hikes. Wisconsin's budget reform. It's working.